Welcome to another episode of the Think Wildlife podcast. Today we talk about the conservation of India's rarest wildcat, the Asiatic caracal. With less than 100 individuals left in the wild, the caracal is on the verge of becoming the second cat to become extinct in India after the recently reintroduced cheetah. In this episode, I interview Shreyas Vijay, the founder of the Caracal Conservation and Research Project. He is one of the only conservationists working on the conservation of caracals in India. We comprehensively discuss the ecology and conservation of caracals. Shreyas also elaborates upon his research on the species. Tune in to this highly interesting episode. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you are listening to. If you are listening on Substack or YouTube, there is an option to upgrade to a paid subscription. While the podcast will not be placed behind a paywall, this will allow me to expand the podcast extensively over the next couple of years. Additionally, 30% of the revenue from this episode will be donated to the Caracal Conservation and Research Project. So, welcome, Shreyas, to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on today.
Hi, Anish. Actually, I'm glad to be here and share my thoughts on caracal, better for conservation. Yep.
What got you interested in conservation and, in particular, felines?
So, conservation is really very emotional thing for me because since my childhood, I was into wildlife and I just started going to camps and visiting national parks. So that's how I developed my interest. But even National Geographic and Discovery channels, they played an important role in just shaping my thoughts and views about wildlife. Also, it's very actually a niche field, and it fascinates me when I see an animal in its natural habitat behaving actually what it should be behaving in wild, like not in captive. It's just very amazing to watch an animal in wild. So that's how I went into conservation. And felines, of course, I mean, felines are like apex and they are so agile and they are so wonderful creatures. They just, I mean, they have literally every single modification in their body to hunt an animal or get the work done. So it's like a masterpiece. So it just fascinates me when I see any cat, not just wild cats, but even domestic cats. That's how I went into felines. I mean, since start.
Talk about the Caracal Conservation and Research Project and how it came into being.
Caracal Conservation and Research Project was an initiative. So back in 2019, so I was actually fascinated with tigers. I wanted to study tigers in my like after my BSc in zoology. So I just went to a national park and started seeing tigers and everything. And then one day I just saw a tail of a caracal. It was in Ranthambore. And I just asked the guide what's it, and he told me about caracals and everything. So when I came back home, I started searching about caracal and every single thing during that time it said every single page actually said caracal is not known to Indian Zoological Society, the behavior, ecology, distribution is not known, and it's very elusive, and now the studies have been done. I mean, there were research papers on caracals, but there was not exact count, and no one knew when caracal breeds or has the mating period or how many cubs they have in a litter or what is the ecology. Are they nocturnal or they like an animal which roams in daylight? What is their habitat? So it just fascinated me. So I started gathering literature, like I just started gathering literature papers on caracals and started noting down the sighting records. That's how I got to know a few of the sighting records of caracals in India. So I had a database of like 100 sightings, but later on it started increasing. And then when I searched more and more, I thought of starting caracal conservation and research project as an initiative. So it's an initiative actually. It's soon going to be a trust. It's a project which is dedicated solely to conserve caracal and their natural habitat, which is not right now the case. We have very less habitat for caracals, but that's what our main goal is. And I don't have much of a big team. My team is not active. I'm the only active member right now. So yeah, that's how the project is working. I have few forest department people with me. So yeah, once the funding gets in and I have full funding, maybe it will take a better momentum.
Where are caracals found in India, and do you have any approximate of how many are there left in the wild?
Okay, so in India, caracals earlier found in 13 states. That's what my literature study tells me. There were even caracals in Karnataka, which people are not knowing. So caracals were literally everywhere in India, and you must have read many articles. People have also read many articles on caracals, especially the article from Raza, one of the best articles right now. So caracals were quite abundant in even with royal families and for hunting and as a pet also. So, but later, right now, they are reduced to three states: Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Madhya Pradesh. Madhya Pradesh had declared caracal extinct, but recently there was a caracal sighting in Morena. So, I think caracal numbers, what uh, the department or what it is presented right now, which is less than 100 individuals, I think there is more to it because maybe somewhere we are lacking behind in searching or tracking caracals properly because there is no dedicated entity which just studies caracal. So all of the caracal data right now we have is based on, or maybe it is found because we were also searching other animals. Like they are combined studies. There are no single study or an organization just working on caracals. So I think there's more to it. Rajasthan had declared around 33 caracals and Gujarat had declared around 20 to 18 caracals. In my course of like 2 years, I found like 8 caracals. So with a very close density. I mean, in a very close space. So I think there are more caracals than we think. So maybe the approach should be a little better. Even I think there are more states. For example, Uttar Pradesh might have caracals. They have a fantastic habitat. We even have Haryana and Punjab where caracals should be existing right now. So I'm not even Maharashtra. Actually, even in Maharashtra, there is a place which I still have to intervene where caracal literally comes every twice a week to catch livestock. And so I think, yeah, caracals are there everywhere. It's just they are very secretive and elusive.
So beyond India, what is the status of the Asiatic caracal, and what is their range, and what about the African caracal?
Okay, so beyond India, so there is no right now. There is no differentiation between caracal, Asiatic caracal, and African caracal by IUCN Red List. So they are considered as least concern because you have a lot of population in Africa, especially the Central Africa. But you have the Oman National Red Book, which classifies caracal as critically endangered. Then you have caracals in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Israel, Jordan, Kazakhstan. Then you have in Lebanon, you have in Syria, you have in Tunisia, Turkey, many places, even in Uzbekistan. So the species is almost legally protected everywhere in Arabian Peninsula. It's just their status is not yet known. So I would suggest being a right now I'm in the team for the Caracal Coasses's Red List. So I might suggest of separating both of them, but there is no genetic paper on proving that they both are different. So technically we cannot separate it. So let's see, but they are abundant in Africa. So Central and Southern Africa, the numbers are really high. In some areas, like caracals are considered pest. So caracals hunt livestock and which is an easy source of food. So farmers literally shoot them on site. And however, caracals also keep down the numbers like of small herbivores. So it's like win-win situation, but still there's lack of awareness. Western parts don't have much caracals. Western as in the Central African Western part. So they don't have much caracals. In South Africa, you have a good number, especially the Cape Peninsula. The density is around 27 to 45 caracals per 100 square kilometers. And the North Africa is about to be extinct. The population is about to be extinct there. So even African caracals, the exact number is not known. For the Asiatic caracal is the same. Locality wise, people have their own numbers, but still it is data deficient. To be honest, it should be considered as data deficient and not least concern because it's a lesser cat and determining the exact count is really hard.
So, talk about what type of habitat caracals prefer. What is the role of mountain ecosystems in their habitat and their ecology?
Okay, so two different things. So by book, caracal is semi-desert animal. Semi lives in semi-arid conditions. It doesn't live in true desert, but it needs sparse vegetation, not too much vegetation, and it it stays away from water. It likes dry river beds. It prefers thorn forest and scrublands, and would love a open scrubland rather than a thicket forest. But that's what all the papers and everything says, and even it prefers undulating terrains. But to be honest, caracal is a my personal view. Caracal is a thorn forest animal, which also is found in open habitats. And the mountainous role is one of the studies which I'm right now doing. So it is just a hypothesis. So if you see other Asiatic caracals in Abu Dhabi or in Israel, in Abu Dhabi, caracals are found on at Jebel Hafid mountains. In Israel, they are found in Kavir, in Kharturan National Park. Kharturan is one of the national park which has the highest population of Asiatic cheetahs. Then even in Ranthambore or even in Ramthara Fort or in Mount Abu, where caracals are found, these all are actually hilly terrains and tepes, which are actually really suitable for caracals, and you have a good population size there. So I think because it is very easy to spot a caracal or any animal in open landscape, maybe somewhere people misconceptualize the thing that caracal is found in open grasslands. Yes, it is true, but what I think personally, it just comes to open grasslands for hunting. But the real habitat is a mountainous terrain where it actually habits or makes its den sites or is like it prefers that habitat more. I'm still trying to study the thing because I want to develop a methodology to prove this. But yeah, that's what I think because some of the places like Israel, the mountains are really very steep and at a high altitude, and caracals are found there and they thrive there. So maybe even in my area like Kutch, where caracals are found, within 1 kilometer of the area, there's a mountain or a hilly structure which is really steep, and one of the best populations Kutch is actually near a mountainous region. So I think there's a lot of debate on this. I mean, I would start a debate on this, but yeah.
So, what are the main threats to their habitat?
Main threats is habitat degradation because that's what I observed. So I would give you an example in my landscape. I have not studied much of the other landscapes. So in Kutch, we have it's a vast area. It's a 45,000 square kilometer area, and the suitable habitat is 36 square 100 square kilometers. Out of which there are many places where the habitat is there. Just because it's degraded, it has invasives, and there's no single caracal. We have scanned the entire area for like 70 to 80 days with extensive camera trapping, and none of the caracal has showed up. So I think habitat degradation is the biggest threat. Maybe solar farms and wind farming, because even that degrades the habitat. And yes, of course, climate change is one of the threats to caracal because as the temperature goes up, caracal prefers colder temperatures to migrate between the landscapes. So I think that's a relatively a bigger cause than habitat degradation.
So, what are the role of caracals as ecosystem guardians?
So caracal is an apex predator, to be honest. They might be a medium-sized cat. I won't say it's a small cat. Actually, it's quite so they play a they actually play a very important role. Many people don't know this, but feline species do prey on abundant species. So they interact. Caracal interacts with almost every species in the food web. So from their birth till they are adult, they interact with every single species. So with insects, with rodents, with normal reptiles, with small mammals to even large mammals. So we have seen caracals on chinkarakals, adult chinkarakals. We have seen caracals on female nilgaikals. So caracals do hunt larger animals. I even have actually paintings of caracals, old paintings of caracals hunting black bucks. And so they do hunt bigger, larger animals. They even hunt smaller rodents and smaller reptiles. So they interact with everything in the food web. So it plays a bigger important or the bigger role in an ecosystem for the ecosystem balance. And in my area, as in Kutch, there are only very few leopards. So in Kutch, leopards control an area of around 40 to 60 square kilometers because it's a dry habitat. So they have increased their territorial size. So combined all my 5 study areas, we only have 3 leopards. So other than leopards, caracals is the next apex predator. So the ecosystem would actually collapse if caracals go extinct in Kutch because there are no wolves. Leopards are very less in number. We have striped hyenas, but they are not predator. I mean, they are a predator, but they are not a carnivore which hunts. They scavenge mostly. So caracal is really important for at least my ecosystem in Kutch. But in, for example, in Ranthambore, you have tiger as the apex predator. So in the lower food chain, caracal plays an important role there. But in many places in Abu Dhabi or in Israel, caracal is the apex predator. So yeah, it's very important to save caracals in order to not let the ecosystem collapse.
I was quite surprised that they can hunt black bucks. Even when you're talking about how there's human wildlife conflict, I was quite surprised that they're a threat to livestock. How severe is the threat of human-caracal conflict?
Human-caracal conflict is not much in India because people don't know exactly what is caracal. Many places, while doing surveys, while doing just social service in villages, and or when people approach us that they have seen a caracal, they actually show a picture of a jungle cat, or they identify jungle cat as caracals, because even jungle cat have black tuft to their ears. So sometimes people think they have seen a caracal and they approach us. So there's not much a threat of caracal. The, at least in my record, I've never seen a caracal threat. There's only one record actually in Uttar Pradesh in 2001. A caracal attacked a human, but even that was because it was surprised, or probably I don't know. But that's the only record I have in my database where there's a human wildlife conflict. Other than that, caracals hunting livestock have not yet come up as a human wildlife conflict where humans are actually retaliating or are angry with caracals. In Africa, of course, caracals are considered pest in most areas. So maybe once the number comes up, maybe there might be conflict. But yeah, CARP initiative will make sure that we resolve the conflict or mitigate it properly.
So, how severe is the threat of the illegal wildlife trade for caracals? And if it's a major threat, why are they hunted?
So illegal wildlife trade is actually a very severe topic because caracals do fall under the exotic pet trade. They are one of the most demanded animals in exotic pet trade, and people are also crossed between normal cat and a caracal to have a caracal cat. So yeah, I have seen many Instagram videos where caracals are kept as pet, but those are African caracals. India may filal there is no threat to caracals. No one has ever come across Indian caracal being smuggled outside because Indian caracal is a bit elongated and not so big and fluffy as the African caracal. So it's not much charismatic. Of course, it is charismatic in its own ways. I love the Indian caracal more. But as a pet owner, someone might not go for Indian caracal, will go for an African caracal. So even the caracals which were caught in India were mostly the African caracals. There's a big news. If you have heard, caracal was caught in Mirzapur. Like four caracals were caught in Mirzapur. They were African caracals, but they were caught in Mirzapur while in between of a smuggle trade. There is threat to caracals in the illegal wildlife trade. As a meat, I'm not sure. In Africa, people eat caracals as a bush meat. They used to, but in India, there's no such record of caracals being hunted for meat or poached for skin or fur, or not yet. So maybe there's not much threat to caracals in India for illegal wildlife trade right now.
So, now let's talk about your research. Recently, you published an article focusing on the climatic drivers of the nocturnal activities of caracals. To elaborate on this study,
Okay, so this was experimental study. So actually, this is not fully published yet. It's an article. So okay. So it was very peak summer in Kutch, and it was literally May, and I had just started the work of CARP initiative and started to camera trap the area in April, and we didn't find any results. I didn't find a single caracal. in May. So I started reading more and more research papers on Asiatic caracals, not just India, but even international papers. And one thing which came into my attention was every single camera trap photo in the research paper of caracals. So the timeline of the camera trap, you can see the coordinates, the time, the temperature, and everything, right? So every single photo of caracal which was taken at night had a temperature rating below 20 degrees Celsius. So which was very fascinating for me. And as a peak summer in Kutch, I started analyzing my photos, and even I took some temperature data of my study area and found out that this is not a cooler place if caracal is actually traveling below 20 degrees Celsius. So then I shifted my study area, I searched more and more study areas, and that's when one of the mountainous terrain area came into my studies, like one of the areas in Kutch, which has an elevation of around 1100 meters. So that area was bit cooler, not bit actually, much cooler than other areas in Kutch. And it has a temperature drop of around 4 degrees. So I started putting grids there and I camera trapped that area. And that's when I started finding caracals in in their movement, like nocturnal movement. So it was very good insight. So that's how I targeted the areas later on, even seeing the temperature drop in the areas. So yes, caracal does travel below 20 degrees Celsius. It loves to migrate during that times when it's cooler. So yeah, so that was a nice thing, but I still have to prove it because there's not much sample size to prove the thing. So it's just a hypothesis and experiment that we did.
So, coming to your research project, the CCARP, the first phase of this project was identifying a suitable study in area, which you determined was the Kutch landscape. So, how did you come to this conclusion and why?
Okay, that's a very good question. So when I started my literature review back in 2019, I got to know that caracals are found in either in Ranthambore National Park or in Kutch or in Madhya Pradesh. That's what the data told me. Like on at the other states, caracals were like almost extinct. So and the dates were very like the dates were more closer. I mean, you had sightings more closer in Kutch and the years. The other states as well showing sightings of 2000 and before that. So in Kutch and Ranthambore, these two places are shortlisted. I even shortlisted Sariska actually. But then when I went to all these three places, I found out that Kutch is more accessible. Second, it's a non-protected area. It's literally a landscape where anyone can easily access, which I shouldn't be telling in podcast actually. But it's an unprotected area. It's very accessible, and the sample size is not big as Ranthambore. But the thing is, in Ranthambore, there are many other animals which influences the movement of caracals and the behavior of caracals. Whereas in Kutch, the only apex predator other than caracal is the leopard. So I have an advantage of actually documenting or recording a good data of caracals, which will be very non-biased. So that's why I chose Kutch. And even the forest department at Kutch was very, very supportive. And studies have been done on Ranthambore. There are plenty of studies, not plenty, but there are many studies which have been conducted in Ranthambore for caracals before. So I thought let's start in Kutch, and it was even the permissions, getting permissions in Kutch was much easier than getting permissions protected area for a Schedule 1 species.
So,
So that's how Kutch,
y-
yeah.
give a brief overview of phase two of this project.
So phase two of the project was camera trapping the whole area. Phase one was just shortlisting the areas and doing a baseline survey and getting what is the vegetation composition and which can be a good habitat and everything. Or doing in land use, land cover, everything, all the baseline thing. Phase two was actually targeting the shortlisted study areas. So out of 1,600 square kilometers, I shortlisted around 50 square kilometer area, which were separated throughout the landscape in different parts or different districts of Kutch. And yeah, the we actually calculated the density, basic density, which was around 20 caracals per 100 square kilometer. This is an estimate because we actually didn't have 20 caracals. And we got the home variance size of an individual, which was around, for males it's around 49 to 67 square kilometers. For females it comes around 23 to 38 square kilometers. So that's what we found in the basic study. And then yeah, we went to the phase 3 because we had a good enough data key where caracal is found and where caracal is not there in Kutch, and how many individuals we can work on, and what what all resources we need for the further phase. So phase two was just a base data for phase three. So it was not much. It was not much. I would say bigger project for us. It was just a thing what we learned in bachelor's and masters, just an assignment.
So,
But it confirmed the presence actually.
you are developed an enhanced camera tracking model tailored specifically for capturing caracals. This is called the space to event modeling system. Could you elaborate about this?
So space two event, I didn't develop space two event. Space two event was improvised for caracals. So space two event model is basically using camera traps to estimate the density or abundance of multiple species. So the study design basically captures photographs of the all target species in an unbiased manner. So it's to estimate the density of multiple species simultaneously. Our approach allowed us to estimate abundance and density of each species with the same effort required to estimate abundance of a single species. So how it works is, so if you see many established methods right now for estimating density require individuals that are marked, okay, or uniquely identifiable based on natural markings. But unlikely all species in an so unlikely for our case it was not possible because to determine or to identify each caracal was very hard on camera traps. So space 2 event was perfect. I mean, you basically, how do I tell you? Because this is not much published right now. Okay, so each camera, in a simple language, each camera is placed at equidistance from each other, and you calculate the angle, the view shed of the camera, and based on that, when an animal travels frequently through the camera, the density is basically high, and you get a relative model of a camera in real time, real space and time. So in my case, it was 500 meter apart and 3 photos, no burst delays, 90 days. and it was rotated for 4 times in 3 months. So every 20th day, we were rotating the cameras in the landscape because I didn't have enough cameras. And so HT model, space to event model, requires measurement of each camera's viewable area. So we calculated the viewable area from a sample camera and use that area for all cameras deployed. And yeah, we collected around 4,200 photographs over 92 camera days, and we calculated the radius of detection of our cameras, and with the angle of detection of around 64 degrees for cutback. So view shed area was around 78 square centimeter and meter square, sorry. And the sample size of HT depends on number of cameras deployed. So the number of sampling occasions, presence and absence, and the occasions with confirmed animal presence ranged from like 2 caracals or 4 caracals, and for other animals it was like around 300. So it's just what I improvised in this for further analysis was, so in each grid I placed only 3 camera in a triangular manner, and then on the other grid I inverted the triangles. So it was good systematic placement of cameras throughout the grid. And when the caracal actually moves between the landscape and when our camera takes photos in real space and time, you actually can see the caracal movement as if it's collared, basically. So it's very hard to explain. I can show you a map.
I think you did a good job
It's
explaining it. You explained it quite well, I feel. My next question is what is the current status of the project and what do you think is the way forward?
so my current status of the project is I'm working on the mountainous terrain hypothesis. That what is the role of mountainous ecology in caracals? I'm also trying to get policy level changes in Kutch. I'm also working on awareness. I've seen plenty of caracals. Believe me, most of the researchers or even me in India have not seen so many caracals what the locals have seen. I mean, they see it on a regular basis. But yes, even they know that numbers have gone down since past 2 years. So I'm working on awareness or telling them the importance of caracals and the significance of caracals in the land. I'm also working on more analyzed data or more robust data, because when it comes to donors or to secure funds, you need a more robust data, because as such the sample size is very low. So even if I get or analyze certain data, because the sample size is low, you cannot prove it. It's always a hypothesis that this can be a possibility, because unless I have like 300 caracals and every single caracal shows the same behavior or shows the same, I don't know, same metrics, it's very hard to prove something. So I'm working on that. I'm working on a corridor. So there is a new corridor which we found in Kutch. So it is a corridor between West and East Kutch, and from where the caracals migrate. It's a the corridor is very distinct. You can actually see stepping stones and you can actually see the habitat just in between those things. And we actually camera trapped the whole corridor and we found movement of 4 caracals in between the corridor. So I'm working on that. I need many resources for it, but yeah, we are securing grants for that. So even forest department is helping through its research wing. So let's see how it goes. Yeah.
And beyond your project, what is being done around the world to conserve caracals?
Actually, quite good studies have been done across the world other than India on Asiatic caracals. So you have Dr. Sheikha from EAD, that is Environment Agency Dubai, which is in Abu Dhabi. They're working in Abu Dhabi's Jebel Afeet Mountains, and they actually spotted caracals after 30 years. And they have, after which they have been continuously working on caracals and tracking and monitoring the individuals. You have in India, you have Tiger Watch. If you have heard, Dharmendra Khandal, he's one of the best. He has one of the best databases of caracals right now. So Tiger Watch is working in Rajasthan and Dholpur region. They even have actually trained volunteers, village volunteers for. I mean, actually, village volunteers have been taught to how to set up a camera trap and everything, and they work on capturing caracals frequently. They have a good database. You have Dr. Ashish Jangid from WII, Chandra Prakash Singh working and on caracals in WII, who have recently came up with a paper. You have actually in Iran, there are many people. There are Yasman, then who is working on distribution of caracals. So Morteza and Mohammed S. They are working. They actually work in Cheetah, Iranian Cheetah Society. So Iranian Cheetah Society is not just working on cheetahs, but they are also working in caracals. So they are even they.
We had them on an episode a few weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, they are working on caracals.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a good database of caracals. So I would love to actually go there and see how they are working. You have Monica Rodriguez. She is husband. She also helped in the project. So even she has worked on caracals. Yeah, many, even Dr. Shomita Mukherjee from SACON. She has done a fantastic work on caracal diet, which was necessary. And she is also working in caracals right now. So yeah, you have many people working on Asiatic caracals. We need more researchers who are solely working on caracals, because just working on caracals would actually give more insights and more better understanding on of the species, how they are adapting the new modern world and everything. Because very few landscapes are there which are left as a continuous patch right now.
So, what have been some of the most prominent challenges from your conservation career so far?
Prominent challenges. So there are many challenges actually. First is securing funds, because as an individual, it's very hard to secure funds for an animal, which is Schedule 1 species. Then major challenges is the sample size. Caracal is really very secretive, and I mean, it's so secretive that from one or two, like literally 1 or 2 hills apart, he will see you and he will just run away. So they are that secretive, and they avoid camera traps. If you're putting them on, even using a no glow or infrared or any type of camera trap, they can detect it very easily, and they avoid it. So you have to put like 2 camera traps in front of each other. So then other challenges I have faced is not much in India actually. People are more supportive, to be honest. In Kutch is actually very, very supportive. The people are good. The forest department is amazing when it comes to conserving caracals or any other species. So, yeah, other challenges maybe, yeah, I think securing grants and yeah, getting the invasives out. That's a very big challenge, because when we remove invasives in Kutch, it's actually getting them out or burning them is not a good solution, because everything is dry and it can create a forest fire if you're not careful. So cutting them, chopping them, yeah, invasives is a major threat right now for us. Other than that, Yeah, not much because in Kutch it is a very continuous landscape. So most of the parts no one owns it. So it's and Caracal loves agricultural lands. To be honest, it uses them as a migratory path between its habitats. So not much challenges in habitat field. But yeah,
So, what have been some of your most memorable moments from your career so far?
the most memorable moment was when I saw my first caracal. It was in Kutch. I mean, I saw in Ranthambore, but when I was not studying the animal. So in Kutch, after many days, many actually months, when we didn't see a caracal, and when we actually saw our first caracal, I had three field staff with me. So there were four people, and we saw our first caracal. That was the one of the best moments because caracal, it was a daylight, a sighting. So when you see a caracal in a daylight, it actually shines like a gold medal. It's very charismatic, it's very beautiful, and I almost not almost, I actually cried after seeing my first caracal. So yeah.
Also, that was the final question I had for you today. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking about caracals.
We have reached the end of this episode of the Think Wildlife podcast. If you are still listening, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast and learned something new about conservation. Feel free to leave your thoughts on the episode and don't forget to share and subscribe. Before we end the podcast, I would like to share another podcast on Indian wildlife called The Thing About Wildlife by Ishika Ramakrishna. Also, for those who would like to learn more about conservation in India, I have attached a link to three books on Indian wildlife, which I highly recommend. One is a field guide to the mammals of India by Vivek Menon, which is by far one of the most detailed field guides I have seen from anywhere in the world. The second is titled At the Feet of Living Things, written by the various conservationists at the Nature Conservation Foundation. It covers 25 years of the organization's research, ranging from the conservation of snow leopards in Spiti Valley to rainforest restoration in Annamalai and dugong conservation in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The final is a four-part series by Mr. H.S. Babla, a former Indian Forest Service officer, which provides a very in-depth analysis of the state of India's conservation and the way forward. It covers species reintroduction, wildlife tourism, the forest rights, and poaching. He also talks about his time as an officer heading various conservation projects in Madhya Pradesh, ranging from the reintroduction of Barasinga and blackbuck to the gore and tackling the Panna poaching crisis. And with that, we end this episode of Think Wildlife Podcast. Thank you once again.